Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Okay. I didn't know about our next guest until we heard about him, but I've been waiting for him forever. Let me explain what I mean by what I just said. Okay. If you think it's confusing to listen to our show when we have health experts, followed by health experts who disagree with one another, you should try it from our end, because you're not listening to everything. We have no choice. We have to listen to everybody. All right. What do I mean by that? Okay, one day we'll have someone, like we had a guy on earlier today, telling us how healthy eggs are, you know? And
right.
I mean, I like eggs, but I don't know. I mean, I'm just doing a radio show. Sometimes I don't even know how to turn the microphone on sometimes. I've had those days, right? So, dead air. What's going on? But, you know, I mean, seriously, we'll talk to, we've had health experts who say you should eat 9 little meals a day. 9 little meals a day. I can't do the little meal. If I'm sitting down, I want to do a big meal. And there's some who say you should do breakfast. Some who say you shouldn't do breakfast. Some who says you should do a lot of this, or be vegan, or be vegetarian, or no, you should eat plenty of bacon, right?
Right.
It's all over the map. Not to mention the stuff that you don't ingest, but it's still like health advice. Like you should use baking soda for cancer, or you should use what's that? That's that plant that grows aloe for sunburn, right?
Yeah.
Some things, I've tried some things, and some things I see, there's no way. Like I had a sunburn one time, somebody said, put iced tea on it. Put iced tea on it. So I've been waiting for our next guest for a very long time, although I didn't know about him. Dr. Morton Tavel is a physician, specialist in internal medicine and cardiovascular disease, and he's written the book I've been waiting for, Robin. It's called I can't even read. Health Tips, Myths and Tricks. It's a physician's advice. It's going to tell you the things you thought were right but are not, and maybe the things that you thought were right and actually do work. Dr. Morton Tavel, this is something we've been waiting for. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate that.
Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from over on the west coast of Florida, down in Sanibel.
Oh, you're down there. Okay. You're in a nice place. You got good weather, too, right? You got good weather right now.
Yeah, a little cool, but not bad.
So we hear these things all the time. I'll drive on just in my drive from home to work. There's a sign that says anti-aging. Now, well, if there's really an anti-aging clinic, why do I see so many old people around here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So there's one example, right? Or am I wrong about that? What is the truth?
That's an interesting question, because there are all kinds of not only anti-aging preparations that you can take, but also anti-aging clinics. Now, you stop and think about that for a minute. How do they prove that? It probably takes 30 or 40 years to prove, and by that time, most of us aren't even going to be around.
No, you know what he should do? He should get one of those an elevator trick. You know the joke about the old lady that gets in the elevator, but the husband has never seen an elevator before. Mm-hmm. And then a young lady walks out of the elevator. He says, "Son, get your wife, get your mother." Right?
Yeah.
So tell me some of the things that we get wrong and some of the things we get right.
Well, let's see. First of all, let me just tell you where I'm coming from, because most of the stuff that's out there about health issues is sent by people who have some kind of a money incentive.
Yes.
I'm sure you're quite aware.
Yes.
And they're selling products, right?
Right.
I am a member of the mainstream medical community, and as such, I would like to sell just knowledge and not products. And that's where I'm coming from. So
that's why we're waiting for you.
After seeing all this bad stuff around, I'm saying, well, why doesn't one of us present the information that's helpful, but in a way that the layman can understand? So I looked around, and I could find hardly anybody from my mainstream community that was willing or able to do that. So I said, well, somebody's got to do it. So I decided I'm going to publish this, book, as well as a previous one called Snake Oil is Alive and Well. Really a repudiation. A snake oil continues to exist all the way back for centuries, and it now has become metaphorically a means to express what doesn't work or what's even deadly, and we call it all snake oil. So that's why I stated it's alive and well. And it continues to be with us, as I'm sure you're quite aware. We see it in the form of all kinds of so-called supplements that are like coming from herbal agents. And we walk through almost any pharmacy, which is supposedly a legitimate pharmacy, and we see racks and racks filled with all these preparations, none of which have been seriously vetted by any agencies that clarify what's safe and what's not safe. That's a fallacy of our governmental oversight dating back to about 20 years, back to the FDA, where they were really not permitted to vet these agents like standard drugs are. So they split off from the standard drugs are the ones that we see on television all the time, which I'm sure you can't stand either.
Yeah.
Where they talk about all these nasty side effects, right?
Oh, exactly. I can't believe that's so scary, very scary.
I want to ask you about one.
Exactly.
There's something that we've heard in the last maybe decade or so over and over and over again, and I don't remember hearing it when I was younger. I'm not saying it's not true, but I'm coming to you to find out what the truth is. Okay. This is this message. There are millions and millions of flora and fauna living in your gut. Okay.
Yeah.
And they make the decisions about you and your weight, and they make all these decisions, and they're like, I don't even know what to picture. I'm trying to picture germs or something.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, so if you take this probiotic, it'll feed them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right. Take it from there. Is there any truth to any of that stuff?
That is a very interesting point and very trendy. It doesn't go back that far, which I think you're rightfully pointing out something that is important. So let's talk for a moment. What is a probiotic, or actually the bowel? We'll talk about the gut first. It's loaded with billions, literally billions of bacteria, most of which are harmless and tend to help protect our health. Now, how does it do that? Well, we really don't understand very well how they operate, but we do understand that if you knock out some of those good ones and let some of the other bad ones grow, you can produce a bad condition, which we refer to as C. diff. I don't know if you've heard that term, but it's caused by a bug called Clostridium difficile, which is a nasty bug which produces a serious inflammatory reaction in the bowel. So we find that if we give somebody broad-spectrum antibiotics that cover a lot of bacteria, they frequently will allow those bad ones to take over and create that disease. So what we do to prevent that C. diff inflammation is to provide probiotics. Well, it turns out that if you're healthy to begin with and not on antibiotics of any sort, there's no need to take probiotics, which are being promoted like crazy all around our society.
Okay.
So that's the basic format.
That's the truth.
So what should we be doing? If you want to take a probiotic, it's okay, but don't do it in the form of some kind of a pill or medicine. There's an easy, safe way to do it, and that's through, you guessed it, yogurt.
Yogurt
with the cultured.
I've heard yogurt was a good one. I've also heard sauerkraut. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. Any of these cultured type of agents, sauerkraut, kimchi, I think is one of them, and miso, I think, is another. There are several out there that are helpful, and obviously they're safe and they're not associated with nasty side effects. So unless you can't tolerate yogurt, they're pretty good.
No. I have another one that I think is a trendy one, and again, it might be true. I'm coming to you for the answer. So you'll get a list of things you should be eating: nuts and fruits and vegetables and dark chocolate. It's like an IQ test. Which one doesn't fit? Dark chocolate. Does that really belong in the group? Yeah.
It surprises the heck out of me, frankly, because we as kids grew up, we always said whatever's tasty is not good for you.
Right.
And it turns out this is just the opposite. Chocolate is pretty good, at least dark chocolate, not so much milk chocolate, which has other things in it. But dark chocolate is good, and the latest research I saw within the past year said that if you take 1.5 ounces a week, which is not a whole lot of chocolate, you will reduce your chances for later development of cardiovascular disease, and you can take all the way up to about 3 ounces, they estimated.
Really?
Once you get above that, you start to reach the limit, and probably not so good.
So that one gets a check mark. That one they're telling the truth to us.
Are allergies really allergies? Are allergies really allergies, or are they just symptoms of something else?
Well, there's all kinds of myths about allergies. I could just mention a couple of myths about allergies. First of all, a lot of people think they're allergic to milk. I think you've probably heard that. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, rather than being allergic to milk, they're actually what we call lactose intolerant. Now, that means that if you drink regular milk, and milk contains lactose, which is a form of sugar, people don't digest that very well, and they're genetically predisposed to that, and they start developing things like cramps and diarrhea and that sort of thing. The way to combat that is not through allergy, but to eliminate lactose milk. There are lactate types of milk that are out there, or you can even take what's called lactase pills, which break down the lactose that render the milk not toxic or not intolerable. So that's one of the allergic myths that we need to dispel right away, and can be dealt with on a practical basis for a lot of people. It's fairly common to have lactose intolerance, so that's one of them. There's a number of other allergy myths out there. One is a good one, which is the idea that if you want to avoid nasal or asthma type allergy, or asthma is a form of allergy, go to the Southwest and you'll avoid it. Well, it turns out nothing could be further from the truth, because there are other kinds of shrubs and trees out in the Southwest that also cause allergies, and you wind up back in the same situation.
Oh,
I used to work in an emergency back in down in Phoenix, Arizona, and there were all kinds of allergic attacks down there as well.
Tell us your thoughts on fish oil. Is there anything to the claims that the fish oil people want us to believe? Anything true?
There's some more not true than true.
Oh, really?
Fish oil per se, take just the fish oil itself. We used to recommend it. I have to admit, I was one of those unfortunate doctors that got led in the wrong direction, because earlier research suggested fish oil was helpful, and we found out within the past couple of years that if you take just pure fish oil, it doesn't help. It may not be toxic or anything like that, although some people get a fishy smell in their mouth and things like that, and gassy and so forth. But anyway, it turns out that the best way to get the fish benefits are to eat the fish itself.
That's usually the way, right? It's
yes, indeed, the best. Yeah.
So
research shows that about twice a week, if you eat fish at least twice a week, you're going to get the major benefits from that. And avoid red meat. That's another issue that I'm into on some of my chapters.
Yeah, that seems to ring true. Yeah, so we had a guest one time, and when I looked at who was behind it, I sort of was suspicious that this was like an infomercial more than a real interview. And he was trying to get us to take green tea extract pills. Okay, and this is what he said. He said the people in Japan are healthy because they drink green tea all the time. He said the amount of green tea you would have to drink, though, would be enough to fill up the back of a pickup truck. And then I said to him, how much tea do they drink in Japan? Because he just got done telling us that they're fine. So I dismissed it, because he in his own, like in half a minute, made me realize that, come on, they're not drinking a pickup truck full of tea every day, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And actually, it is interesting. Green tea extract, as far as I can see, checking through the scientific information, doesn't really have much support for it. But green tea itself seems to be somewhat beneficial for cardiovascular health. It helps with blood pressure. It helps with blood sugar, things of that sort. Up from about 1 to 4 cups a day, and that's it. You go beyond that, and there's no evidence of additional benefit. And actually, it's slightly superior to black tea or regular tea with regard to that research showing some benefit.
How about organic? I mean, I go to the grocery store. I love buying vegetables and things, but then I see organic, and they're so expensive. So I'm not going to buy that. What is the difference between? Because I think we're pretty healthy here on the vegetables I choose that are not organic.
Yeah, you're absolutely on target on that one. I would say, let me just see what I got some notes on that, as a matter of fact, which is kind of interesting. Organic is actually refers to organic food is produced free of chemically formulated fertilizers, growth stimulants, antibiotics, or pesticides. Now that sounds okay if we want to eliminate those things, and I would say that's fine if you want to spend the extra money, as you point out. But overall, frankly, there is little evidence that conventional foods pose greater health risks than organic products. Although researchers have found that organics had a lower rate of minor pesticide residues than conventional fruits and vegetables, the pesticide levels of conventional foods generally fall within allowable safety limits. I might add that if you have conventional foods like vegetables, fruit, wash those thoroughly before you eat them, and you'll get rid of most of any possible residues that are there. As far as research studies comparing organic with conventional foods, research has found really no health differences in outcomes, at least between 1 to 2 years. Unfortunately, there are no long-term studies. There is one suggestive study, but I would say the jury's out still. That I think it was a French study that showed that for a 10-year period, there was a slightly lower rate of cancer in people who had organic foods. But again, that's a very soft kind of bit of information, and I would not want to recommend the general public to go strictly organic. If you have a choice and you can handle the expense, okay. As far as taste or nutrition is concerned, there is no advantage, as far as I could tell, between taste or nutrition. If you think organic tastes better, okay. I don't necessarily think so, and I don't necessarily go organic myself.
Nice.
Well, that is a trending thing too, and you see a lot of people saying, "Get the organic version of this and of that." Or is there anything that we might not think of that you want to bring up? Because the book, for those just tuning in, is called Health Tips, Myths, and Tricks. Dr. Morton E. Tavel is our guest. He's the author of the book. It's his advice on health information to get us to see what some of these things that come our way are snake oil, basically.
Mm-hmm,
I mean,
exactly.
And I've always been suspicious of a lot of them, but at the same time, I do a radio show. So when I talk to people who, they've written a book or they come across as an expert, if I see, for example, that they are with, what's a good example, the dairy industry, there's nothing wrong with milk or with cheese. And I love cheese. I'm not anti-dairy, but I'm just curious about the actual healthiness of it, that stuff.
Yeah, well, of course, the old Greeks used to say everything in moderation, and that's probably still pertains. And as a matter of fact, I noticed that in the past couple of years, some of the scientific literature has exonerating eggs, so that they're no longer on the no-no list, you might say, so much. So I think that's okay, as long as we stay with the most recent credible research. Unfortunately, what you're referring to is non-credible stuff. Frankly, the way I like to go as far as diet is concerned, first of all, as I indicated before, you should try to avoid red meat as much as possible, limiting it to no more than twice a week to be as safe as possible to be consistent with most of the research that's out there, because it indeed does cause problems that I wouldn't care to go into right now because of the technical nature of it. But in general, I recommend the so-called Mediterranean diet, which is a good plant-based eating plan that can help with even help with weight loss.
See, now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's another trending thing, the Mediterranean diet. And when we talk about individual foods, it's sometimes confusing. But if you give us what's the one diet where they want you to eat all just meat? Atkins, yeah. I mean, we don't know if these things are really good or not.
Yeah, which diet are you referring to? There's a whole bunch of fad diets out there.
Yeah, the Atkins is the one we just mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, Atkins. Yeah, there's Atkins, the South Beach, low carb, ketogenic, et cetera, And interestingly enough, now that you raised that up, there was a very good medical summary published within the past year that compared all those diets with one another and against just plain caloric restricting both carbohydrates as well as fats. They came up with a conclusion that was very interesting, that none of those diets was any better than just restricting either carbohydrates or fats alone, and preferably restrict both of those.
Is that right?
So the bottom line is, hey, if you can stick with any diet that's palatable to you and that you can stick with for a period of time that does restrict as much in the way of carbohydrates or fats or both, and can stick with it over a long period of time, you have the best chance of keeping your weight under control. I should quickly add a bit of information about soft drinks, because that comes up all the time, and we all know that sugary drinks are very conducive to overweight and bad outcomes. But then I'm asked, well, what about those sugar-free drinks that we see all advertised all the time and perhaps constitute 30 or 40% of all our intake, at least in this country? And it turns out that they're not beneficial to health either. As a matter of fact, in the past year or so, there have been suggestive data saying that those drinks can increase chances for heart attacks and strokes slightly. So,
really?
I would discourage their use as well. I've tried constantly in the office to get people to lose weight. They constantly tell me, well, I'm trying to switch by going to sugar-free drinks, and they never lose weight. And the answer is that statistically they're right, because what happens is you substitute a sugar substitute, and it creates a different mechanism in the brain that tells you that you may be getting calories, but you're not. And what happens is you get hungrier for other things, and you seem to make up any loss. Make food. So that doesn't work either.
Doctor, before we wrap it up, let me let a listener ask you a question. I have somebody waiting on hold. Good morning. Thank you for waiting. You're on the air with Dr. Tavel.
Yes, thank you. Recently, my wife has gotten off of milk, and she comes home with this almond milk kind of a drink that's got less calories and more calcium. Is this a good product to use?
Good question.
Well, there's a bunch of milks like soy milk and almond milk, and those milks. And actually, they really aren't milk; they're just protein products made with nuts and water, essentially. But basically, those are pretty good. They contain the right ingredients that I would tend to recommend those if you want to switch to one of those and can tolerate those better. I like them.
All right. Well, it sounds like she was using almond milk, and from what he said. So yeah, she's doing a good thing. Okay, the book is called Health Tips, Myths, and Tricks. I found it on Amazon. Do you have a website, Doctor?
Yes, I do. It's called Morton Tavel, MortonTavel.com, and you can get on there. And not only that, you could order my book through that website, but also I put out a weekly blog that has the little health tips and myths right there, so you can expand the information that you've already gotten from having paid for my book, hopefully.
Doctor, thank you for being on the air with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it, and I wish everybody a good day and a happy New Year. A little belated, perhaps.
And if you're ever in the area, you're welcome to do this again in the studio. That would be fun.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You take care and have a good day.
Thank you. We'll take a break. Be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source. Broadcasting from the Paddock.
Here is your 1-minute news brief. Governor Ron DeSantis has selected Judge Barbara Lagoa to sit on the Supreme Court. Lagoa becomes the first Cuban-American female on the High Court. A new truck parking availability system by the Florida Department